Hey guys, this is here, repeat the question. We always get more questions than we have time when we talk about sleep. We have 35 minutes to talk about sleep, and I actually thought it was going to be a longer talk, so the talk I prepared for you guys is a longer talk than that. So we won't go through all the slides, but we can answer some of the questions. Before I start, I actually want to thank you guys. When I first was invited by Dr. Khan to come speak to you guys many years ago, I thought, what am I going to this cardiology conference for? And I felt really self-conscious about coming up here. I didn't feel good about coming up here at all, because I'm not a cardiologist, and I'm awful with my stethoscope. So I felt really weird about that. But you guys have always made me feel welcome, so now it's become one of my favorite conferences to come to. It's not only that, thank you. You can clap if you like, but I thought, I like it so much, I thought I was here last year. You know? Like, yeah, I'll go there every year. I'm like, no, you haven't been here in a few years. And what happened is, because of people like Dr. Wright, who I got to know here, and Steve, I think he's still here too, they talked about nutrition and the heart and all this kind of stuff, and I started paying more attention to it. So I started thinking a little bit about that too. So I've changed my diet, in part was because of hearing you guys talk about the heart so much here. That helped me a lot too, so thank you, all of you, for that. But let's talk about sleep. I've never had a lecture, I never followed a lecture about amputation before. And my father had diabetic foot ulcers, and he actually lost both legs. So this has been a very serious thing for me. He died at age 51 from diabetes complications. But let's talk a little bit about amputation. If you want to talk a little bit about sleep, those of you who think you're a little bit bored right now, look up on your phone 2 words. Just do a quick search. I know you guys have been on your phone most of the conference. I've been seeing you guys. I've been doing it too, right? Just look up right now 2 words together, amputation and trazodone. Look up those 2 words together, and you see the other appendages we're concerned about, and see how you think about it. Any of you who are prescribing trazodone, take a look at that. Now, you've got excellent speakers coming up here, and a lot of times saying, well, you know, but you've got really good, as far as sleep goes, you have really good expertise here. Because I want to acknowledge that Everett Trevor's here, over 80 years old, seeing patients 5 days a week. So you can see that getting good sleep is also good for your health and longevity. So thank you for doing this. You got an excellent sleep doctor in your community right here. Did you guys look up amputation and trazodone? Who's going to prescribe it again? At least to a man. Don't do that. Don't prescribe it anymore. It's not approved for insomnia, and it's most commonly used medication. It's something you never unsee again. I mean, that last doctor showed a bunch of disgusting photos to you guys you're never going to forget. So at least look that one up and see what you guys think of those photos now. And that'll keep you awake. This just recently came out. This is the Journal of Ethics. The American Medical Association has a Journal of Ethics. I did not know that. Somebody left their glasses here, by the way. The Journal of, they're yours? Cool. But they said something interesting. There's a quote here. The American Journal of Ethics had an entire issue devoted to sleep. The October issue is devoted to sleep, and it talks about sleep hygiene and stuff, but there's a quote here that I'll read to you. Then instead of just talking about sleep disorders, I'm going to talk about sleep disorders with you now, but the theme of this issue is the broader sense, and how sleep is perhaps best conceived as a communal natural resource. Think of sleep the same way we think about clean air and water, things that we need to live and survive. That it becomes an ethical issue, right? That it's not just about sleeping, but it's also an ethical issue, protecting our ability to sleep. Healthcare disparity issues came up a lot during the pandemic. What was declared a essential worker depended a little bit on what was going on. And people who had the luxury of being able to work from home. I was a barefoot doctor for a while, right, doing telemedicine. We actually got more sleep. And for a lot of people in the Bay Area, it took a global pandemic to have a less stressful life because they didn't have to commute anymore. But for other people who had to go to work every day and not know if they're going to get this illness and pass it on to the family, it was very stressful. So that affected how people slept. So think about sleep in the bigger picture. Of course, we're talking about sleep disorders, but think of it as a bigger issue because you've been sleeping your entire life. You've been sleeping longer than you've been breathing oxygen. You've been sleeping longer than you've been eating solid food. You think we should all be really good at it by now, right? But it's an extremely common problem. So one of the things I always think about, this is a saying I came up with a long time ago. The symbol for sleep medicine, when they created the field of sleep medicine, was that yin and yang symbol. Our founders started using that yin and yang for in the 70s. And to explain this, I had a simple platitude. Your life is reflected in your sleep, and your sleep is a reflection of your life. just kind of reflect that saying. But I've said it so many times, and Dr. you were kind enough to mention I teach a class at Stanford. The students kept putting it up online. So now it's actually spread. So this same saying shows up on websites all over the place. And I had a patient, a gentleman tell me that he was in Lebanon, of all places, and he was in a mattress store in Lebanon, and that quote was there with my name underneath it in Lebanon. So you can look that up, but think about this, right? Because even though I stand before you as a sleep doctor, the people I see in reality don't come to me because of how they sleep. They come to me how they feel when they're awake, which they attribute to their sleep. So somebody says to me, I didn't sleep last night. Well, good for you. You know, you got more time to do more stuff. Oh, no. What's the problem? Well, the next day, I felt tired. So you're not here because of how you slept. You're here because of how you feel when you're awake and you feel tired. So we always have to take into account what's happening. We can sedate people with all kinds of medication. We can knock you out. If you drink plenty of alcohol tonight, hope you have a good after party tonight, you have a great time. You drink plenty of alcohol, you may pass out, but you're not going to have a good night's sleep. Right? So you just don't want to equate being sedated with getting a good night's sleep. You must feel refreshed. Right? And that's the key thing with sleeping. So sleep is the most natural and powerful form of self-care that we have. It really is reflecting on how we do things. I was thinking a little bit of Dr. Wright gave the mention about the brown fat, you know, and you talk about losing weight. When you guys gain weight, you feel like a whale, right? You've heard that same, slept like a whale, felt like a whale? Turns out whales have a very interesting way of dealing with their heat. They have these huge brains, and there's some hypothesis that what the whale is doing is the brain uses up a lot of energy, so that the whale, in order to be warm-blooded in cold water, it actually circulates the blood past its big brain to heat up the blood. And that's what it's doing. So the function of sleep in the whale is different than us for our brains, too. I mean, I'm sure they're smart, but they're not that smart. They have these huge brains, right? So apparently that's something that's happening with them, right? So you have to always take into account metabolism. And when it comes to sleep, all of us have dips in our temperature. Our core temperature stays, you say 98.6, that's an average. Your temperature dips a little bit at night, and it picks up a little bit at other times. And that oscillation of our core body temperature is a circadianly rhythm-mediated process, and that predicts our sleepiness. So all of us get a little drop in alert, and our core body temperature goes down a little bit when the day's at its hottest after lunch. That's why we get a little bit sleepy sometimes after lunch, which is you say, oh, I ate too much lunch, that's why I'm sleepy. That's not that simple, because breakfast doesn't make us sleepy and dinner doesn't make us sleepy. And we get a surge of alertness in the evening. Humans are more alert at night than at any other time. Your peak alertness is about 2 hours before you fall asleep. So think about what time you typically go to sleep. You say go to bed, round number, say midnight, right? 10 o'clock, it's really hard to go to sleep because your brain's not expecting you to be asleep at that point. If you believe a central paradox of sleeping, that animals that are sleeping can be attacked at any point, when should you be most alert? Before you lower your guard. The animals go from peak alertness, then they go into sleep, and they go into delta sleep, the deep sleep. If you have any kind of sleep tracker, I have two, you'll get that deep sleep. That's in the first third of the night. So you go from your most alert, coast is clear, to my deepest sleep. And then I start oscillating every 1 to 2 hours. I wake up, right? So every 1 to 2 hours, you go into these REM cycles. And nobody in this room's ever slept through the night. That's a myth. You never will ever sleep through the night. Never have, you never will. All humans wake up about every 1 to 2 hours. All humans open their eyes, make sure everything's okay, and we go right back to sleep. You only wake for a few seconds. Don't remember it. Don't believe me? Simply hover over your bed partner tonight. Watch what they do, okay? They're going to see them. Open their eyes, you know? That's what we do, right? How can we be 8-hour sleeping mammals if you have to feed babies every 2 to 4 hours, unless the ability to wake up is not hardwired into our brains? So waking up is not the issue. It's going back to sleep, and being aware that you're awakening is the issue for our patients. That's what we have to tackle. So functions of sleep, we always ask about this kind of stuff. Definitely it helps with learning and memory. It's an amazing thing. All of us have had this experience. I'm sure this is a universal experience. You ever were studying, reading, and or you have homework, you got something to do, and you're reading, and the lines are getting blurry on you, and it won't sink in, whatever you have to study. You're like, oh my God, I can't deal with it anymore. Then you go to sleep, and a few hours later, something seemed impossible, now it's possible. How does it? That has to be explained. That has to be happening. Something is happening inside your head when that happens inside your brain. And that's what sleep is doing. It's kind of restoring this plasticity of the brain, getting it ready to learn. And in fact, one of the features of our brains and our sleep is it helps us adapt to a changing world. We're not plants. So we have to adapt to a changing world. And I think that what's happening in our sleep is our brain is taking information that it acquired during the day, incorporating into information that we acquired in the past, and coming up with solutions to problems and thinking. People find inspiration in their sleep. So that has one of those functions to it. But it's also general maintenance things that go on. One of the things we talk about is how these horrible diseases like Alzheimer's disease, the accumulation of fibrillary tangles in our brain, these neurodegenerative process may actually be due to problems that occur in our sleep decades beforehand. It's just like you can knock out 90% of your liver before you get cirrhosis, and you can lose a kidney and still function just fine. We think you're probably hitting your brain for years of poor sleep before it finally takes its toll on you. But that's one of the big concerns has been the role of how does improving your sleep now may improve your memory in the future. And this is playing a role also how we pick our medications for sleep too. So basic maintenance stuff that's happening, custodial stuff, right? You guys are all seem like responsible people, but you're gonna leave some things behind here. Whoever comes here Monday to speak, the room will be clean because there's custodial stuff that happens behind the scenes, and that's part of what's happening in our sleep. So ultimately, study of sleep, study of consciousness. I made this slide for you the last time I spoke here. You know, you do need the brain, right? But you need the heart, and it goes together. And when I first started in sleep medicine, I remember going to talk to went to a cardiology grand rounds, and they were talking about hypertension. And I mentioned, well, about the impact of sleep apnea and hypertension, and they actually laughed at me. I remember being laughed at. And then the guy said, they were laughing at you. They're not laughing with you, they were laughing at you when you talk about hypertension and sleep. So that was decades ago, but now one of the most common causes, one of the most common reasons people get referred to us is because of cardiologists sending in patients specifically for atrial fibrillation and uncontrolled hypertension, so thank you. But it's come around. And the reason that it took a while is because cardiology is a more conservative field. They needed that evidence to accumulate, because everybody's trying to get a piece of cardiology, right? Everybody's trying to get you guys' attention. There's also primary care doctors. But the data is now solid. They're getting better sleep, although it seems self-evident, but now the data is there that getting better quality sleep is good for your overall health. And we talk about sleep health a lot now. So when you think about how to get a history for sleep, how to think about this, you're going to say, well, I didn't train in sleep medicine, how am I going to do this? This is very easy. I picked the easiest specialty I could find. That's what I really did in medical school. I really did. You know, I don't know how you feel that way, Dr. Ev. It's not hard, right? It ain't that hard. It's kind of fun. Because most of our patients get better. It's unusual for them not to improve. But when I think about somebody's sleep, I think of it in 4 components. I think about the amount of sleep, but people often stop at that, right? New parents say this all the time. How many hours should my child sleep? What they're really asking, how many hours can I be away from my child? That's what they're really asking you, right? Because the only break you get to be with the kids when they're sleeping. You know, if I say that same line to a group of teenagers, they look at you like baffled. What do you mean? My parents don't want to be around me at all times? Because they think of us, when you're around your kids, you're in parent mode. If I talk to adults, they understand you need a break from your kids, but your kids don't understand that about you guys, right? They don't think, oh, what do you mean you don't want to be with me at all times? But the amount of sleep is important, but it's not just the amount. Just so you can be overweight and malnourished, the quality of your sleep is important. You should never wake up tired. If you wake up tired, something is wrong. You don't leave restaurants feeling hungry. If you finish lunch today and we're hungry after lunch, something is wrong. You should never wake up tired. Simply, if a patient says to you, no matter how much sleep I get, even if I get more hours of sleep, I'm always tired, that's a hard stop. That's what you want to get a sleep study on. People say, when should I order a sleep test? When the sleep is not refreshing. Easiest thing in the world. I'm tired no matter how much sleep I get, order a sleep test. Oh, they always come back positive. That's because you're not ordering enough of them. Right? Because you're waiting too long to order it. We need to have some negative sleep results. We need to have some normal sleep studies because the other reason people are tired. But if every time you go to this is positive, you probably missed it. Right? You can only get moderate or severe sleep apnea if you had mild sleep apnea to begin with. Right? And when does that develop and how does that manifest? So hopefully all of us are thinking about preventive medicine, and one of the things you can do is just catch it early. None of you should ever snore. Right? Snoring is always, always bad. Right? That's one of the things that we're looking for. Our enemy is going to be mouth breathing. We don't want any mouth breathers around. Okay? If you guys know any mouth breathing kids, mouth breathing is the enemy for us, especially in kids. So the amount of sleep, quality of sleep, timing of sleep. You want to know your patient. Just a real quick history. Tell me how many sleep you're getting. Do you wake up feeling tired, refreshed? Do you take naps? Are you a shift worker? Are you moonlighting somewhere? Get a sense of the timing of their sleep. How much do they sleep in on weekends versus weekdays? And ultimately, your state of mind. Ask your patient to look forward to sleeping. What does sleeping mean to them? Sleeping is something that they dread. People with chronic insomnia, they dread going to bed. They may be drowsy in the living room, in the kitchen somewhere, and they feel falling sleepy. But when they get to the room, wide awake, chronic insomnia. The thought of sleeping is waking them up. They're so stressed out because sleeping is something that they're not good at. They're frustrated with, and they have to do it every night. And that tolls them every night. Should I take a pill? Do I not take a pill? Is the pill going to be bad for me? Do I take half a pill? What if I run out of refills? Do I take 2 pills? What am I going to do then? And on and on and on and on, right? So think about somebody's state of mind. Are you looking forward to tomorrow? Do you dread your day? So you got to get your sense of patient's state of mind. One of the things about that yin and yang symbol I showed you earlier is This is supposed to represent the day and the night. My training is in child neurology, but I take care mostly of adult patients, the part of psychiatry, and I like it that way because it takes care of the entire family. That's how we think of it, right? So you got to get a sense of what does sleep mean to somebody. You may have a child who has mild sleep apnea. Very simple scenario. And we have mild sleep apnea, what do they manifest with? Being tired in the morning, a little bit grumpy. Parents don't know the kid has something physically wrong with the quality of their sleep. They'll think, oh, you didn't get enough hours of sleep. So now they send you to bed early because you're always tired in the morning. You're going to go to bed early. So now going to sleep becomes a punishment. And humans are most alert at night. So you take that child who has a physical disorder of their sleep that's not been recognized, and you make them go to bed early. Now they're laying in bed frustrated. They can't sleep because biologically they can't do it. And now they develop habits to help themselves sleep better. And they start saying, oh, it's too dark, all these other things. So they start developing insomnia behaviors because their sleep apnea is never recognized. So one thing goes wrong, and then you do not identify properly because we often only think about the hours of sleep. Get a sense about the quality of the sleep and the child's state of mind, right? Don't wake up tired. I already mentioned that to you guys. Sleep disorders we deal with, there's over 80 different sleep disorders, and insomnia is with an S, there's different versions of it. I want to focus on sleep apnea because that ties in more to the heart, but we can discuss any one of these conditions that you like. So sleep apnea can kill you, no doubt. What does Anthony Scalia and Jerry Garcia have in common? They both died of untreated sleep apnea. Clearly look at the history, and what's Prince's last name? What? Carrie Fisher died of sleep apnea too. Yeah. So Garcia, if you look at his description of it, he was coming off heroin. And when you use heroin, you have less REM sleep. Sleep apnea is worse when you're dreaming. So anything that gives you more REM is going to give you greater chance of having worsening sleep apnea. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, your peak heart rate is when you're dreaming. Think about that. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, your peak heart rate is when you're dreaming. Heart rate accelerates. And if when you're dreaming, your muscles are most relaxed, you're lowering your oxygen in your blood. Now your heart's accelerating as you have less oxygen available. You're perfectly set up for sudden cardiac death and mortality. One of the questions has always been, why do people die in the mornings? Right? Why are the morning time more prevalent for heart issues? And we think it's in part maybe related to these issues. It's probably more complicated than just that. But we know that dreaming dominates the last third of the night. And that's actually when sleep apnea is at its worst. You'll have lots of your patients may use CPAP machines. Some of you may be doing this yourselves. You say, well, I'm going to put on my CPAP machine in the beginning of the night, but after I've slept a few hours, the insurance wants only 4 hours of usage. I'm just going to take it off for the second half of the night. And I tell my patients, that's like putting on the seatbelt in the driveway and taking it off when you get on the highway. Because the sleep apnea is worse in the last third of the night. You really want to wear it the full night. Another thing to know is that if a patient gives you a suspicion of sleep apnea, and when you actually get the sleep test, it comes back normal or much milder than you expected, take a look at how much time they were in REM sleep. Sometimes what happens is a lot of sleep labs, they don't have enough time, or they cut off the last third of the night to be faster. And then you're not seeing them at the very worst. You really want to see somebody on their back and in REM sleep, dreaming time. That's when the sleep apnea is at its worst for most of us. So Garcia was coming off heroin. He was in rehab. And the newspaper reports, this is all public knowledge, was that they heard him snoring, and then they went and checked down the hall. When they heard him stop snoring, he was dead in bed. He had diagnosis of sleep apnea, wasn't using his CPAP. You shouldn't, by the way, if any of your patients or people in your lives are using CPAP, you should have 0 snoring. Not less snoring, 0. If anybody you know is using CPAP and is still snoring, something is wrong with the device. It's like wearing glasses. When you put in your glasses, your vision should be 20/20, right? So it's not almost 20/20. So if you have a CPAP device, you should have 0 snoring. So that's what happened to him. And then Judge Scalia, apparently he'd had an MRI, he had some kind of injury or something, but he went to some hunting lodge in Texas with his buddies and hung out, whatever he does when he's hanging out with his buddies. But then they found him in bed, dead, with an unplugged CPAP machine at his bedside. And patients often will ask us this, do I need to use it all the time? It says only when you plan to sleep, I tell them, right? That includes your naps, by the way. It's sleep apnea, not night apnea. So if you're actually laying down to sleep, take a nap, put on the CPAP machine too, right? These guys died and you're laughing. What's wrong? It's ridiculous that this happens to us. So sleeping should be silent. Don't ever accept it to be an issue. This is what sleep apnea is. It's these pauses in our breathing. The brain essentially says, the brain says, I'd rather sleep than breathe. Think about how important sleeping is. The brain says, I'd rather sleep than breathe. So you keep sleeping when you stop breathing. That's what the apneas look like. I'm going to go a little quicker because I want to save some time. It was originally described in children. There's the Pickwick Papers and somebody who died of Pickwick in the 70s. A little quicker on that. Our enemy's mouth breathers. So normally when your mouth is closed, you should be able to breathe through your mouth. Let me see. This is what we're looking for. So mere little tiny babies, right? They have those little powerful tongues. They can express milk. Think about how powerful that muscle is. Get milk out of it, all right? Little tiny guys, they can't walk, they can't do anything. They can get milk out. That's how powerful their suck and swallow is, right? That's what they're doing. It's amazing when you think about it. So that little tongue should normally hit the roof of the mouth. And as the tongue grows, it molds the soft bone above it, the palate. So your tongue and your soft palate should fit like hand and glove. But if instead you have nasal obstruction, allergies, big adenoids, whatever reason, trauma to your nose, you can't breathe through your nose well, you're going to sleep with the mouth open. And the growth of our bones occurs in sleep. The growth hormone secretion occurs in sleep. That's when it's happening. You're not growing all the time. You're preferentially growing in sleep. Growth hormone peaks secretion in slow wave sleep. So that's when it's growing. So if you're sleeping like this, your face will grow like that. You have facial elongation. And if you look in their mouths, you're going to see these high arched palates. And if you guys want to play doctor with me, look in the mouth of the person next to you, shine a flashlight, use your phone, and see if the roof of the mouth is narrower than their tongue. Or when they stick out their tongue, the little crescent marks on the sides of it. Look at the tongues. It's not about being fat. Sleep apnea, a lot of the patients are overweight, but we have a lot of thin people with sleep apnea. The issue is that the tongue is taking up too much space in the throat. Sleep apnea is a throat issue, not a neck issue, not a belly issue, not a heart issue. It's a throat issue. Because you use your throat for conflicting functions. Use your throat for eating, breathing, talking, laughing, singing. Right? Think about what you need to do in order to accomplish that. Right? That chamber with food and oxygen mixes is the throat. You have conflicting functions. You need a rigid pipe to sustain the negative force of the lungs sucking in the air. You need a collapsible tube to get the air, to get the food down. So the biggest thing in that space is our tongues. So if you look in anybody's mouth, if their tongue is wider than their palate, they're set up for sleep apnea. You see anybody with their face kind of elongated, you can look at their baby picture and see the face used to be rounder. So that's what we're looking for, is these high arch palates. And this affects their learning. Yes, I do work with kids. Look at this. This is over 100 years ago. This is 1917, World War I time. And if you can read the caption, it's a little better here than there for me, but it says, if you look at all these people, these mouth-breathing kids, mouth-breathing means adenoids. Adenoids means deadened intellect. This is a medical textbook. Can you imagine the medical textbook describing your children as having a deadened intellect? What's wrong with my son? What's wrong with Johnny? He has a deadened intellect. That's what they said. That was the diagnosis. Typical adenoidal faces showing mouth breathing, flattened nose, protruding eyes. You guys know patients like this? People like this? That you're looking for, mouth breathing. You want to tell if you have this issue right now, all of you can do this right now. You can play, again, doctor with me. Feel right now that your tongue inside your mouth. Feel the tip of your tongue. The very tip of your tongue, is it touching your teeth or the roof of your mouth? How many of you are touching your teeth? Raise your hands. Come on, high. Come on, so you can see, look around. Good, okay. And how many of you touching the roof of your mouth? So only a few of you. And your tongue not doing anything at all, just sitting there. Or you guys are just asleep and ignoring me. No? The tongue should hit the roof of your mouth. If your tongue is touching your teeth, you're set up to snore. Yeah, it's true. You're not snoring? You're a little defensive. What? What? Your tip of your tongue is touching the roof of your mouth?
And I snore.
Then it's your nose, probably. Well, since you volunteer, let's play some more. Let's do a snoring sound, you and I. Okay, I'm going to go first. Your turn. Try to snore. A little louder, please. Come on. That's the cutest snore I've heard. Okay. All right, now let's do this. I'm going to stick out my tongue as far as I can, hold it tight between my teeth. I'm going to bite down on it. I can't snore. Can you hear the noise? Her breathing? The lady next to you, can you hear her breathing when her tongue's sticking out? Wake up. No, yeah. Anyway, if you can snore with your tongue sticking out of your mouth, then you probably have nasal obstruction. It could be some other level. But look, that's something to look for. Right? It's not as simple as I'm saying, but that's when if somebody can stop snoring when they stick out their tongue, then you can maybe prescribe a mandibular advancement device, something a dentist can make for you for sleep apnea. That's one of the ways of distinguishing whether that's the right tool or not for you, is by them mimicking the snoring sounds. Oh, I forgot to talk about that last slide. We can do a lot of home testing now. That's a separate issue, but insurance companies often will force you to home test first. It's not okay. Just know, but if you're getting home testing, we do a lot of them where I work also, but they give us false negatives. So if a home test comes back negative and you clinically suspect sleep apnea, then request that it either be repeated or that they, more importantly, you can maybe get an in-lab test. Because these are don't pick up the milder cases. They're based on desaturations, and if your patient is thin, healthy lungs, they may have a lot of blockage in their throat and still be tired and fatigued, but not have the desaturations that they're looking for. So just know home sleep tests are good tools, save us time, save us money, good tools, but they're just tools. Know that they give us false negatives. So don't accept a negative sleep test or home test and say you're done, right? So this is some data. I was just trying to find some hard stuff for you guys. So this is a more recent publication, and direct healthcare costs, direct, not indirect, $95 billion a year from sleep disorders. There's all of the indirect costs also. People spend money on mattresses, how it impacts their bed partners, how it impacts other members of the family, all the things that you do because you don't sleep well. But just direct costs, $95 billion a year. People with sleep disorders twice as often have doctor visits, more ER visits, and also prescriptions. They die faster, less than 7 hours of sleep. Resistant hypertension is there. And if you have if you're not getting enough sleep, it predicts you developing hypertension as you get older. So you can look about that. The estimate's about 1 billion people worldwide have sleep apnea that's not been detected yet or treated yet. 1 billion. That's a lot. There's a lot of data on atrial fibrillation. You can see this, that if you just have people sleep longer, sleep better, the AFib tendencies decrease. Less sleep time, greater disruptions of your sleep. Greater incidence of atrial fibrillation. Catching up. I'm not talking about the condiment. I'm talking about catching up your sleep. Right? Catch up. I'm from New York. If I say catch up, it will sound like ketchup. No, catching up on your sleep. The first evidence that you're not getting enough sleep is that you're sleeping in on weekends. Your kids sleep in on weekends when they go through adolescence. That is a common thing. So it's common statistically, it's a normal thing, but it's not a physiological thing to do. Weekends are an artificial thing. You're not supposed to sleep in longer on weekends. You shouldn't need to do that. You're only doing that because you're sleep deprived. 5- and 6-year-olds do not sleep in on weekends. Parents wish their kids would, but they don't need to because they get all the sleep they have during the week. It's when the kids go through adolescence, when they have a biological shifting. Now, adolescents go to bed later at night, but school starts too early. Now you're sleep depriving them. And they compensate by sleeping in more on weekends. But think about it, we don't do this with food. We don't say to your kids, listen, eat all you like Saturday and Sunday, because come Monday, I'm going to starve you. And then when the week's over, you're going to get more sleep on the week, and I'm going to start starving you again next Monday. We wouldn't do that with food, but we do that with their sleep. We sleep deprive them. And there's some studies there on adults, when they're trying to catch up on the sleep, that the more that they're catching up on their sleep, the more likely to have some heart issues going on. You can take a look at that. That means they're not getting enough sleep during the week. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to sleep in. Sleeping in more than 2 hours in teenagers, at least in a South Korean study, was predictive of suicidal thinking, suicidal behavior. Treatments, how are we doing for time? We're supposed to stop in 10 minutes? Or?
You have up now until 1:45.
Oh, really? You sure? Okay.
That's with questions.
Oh, with questions, okay. So anyway, this is the treatments for sleep apnea. We talked about conservative treatments, sleeping on your side, sleeping on, avoiding alcohol close to bedtime. I've been saying for years, you're better off drinking with breakfast than you're after dinner. Alcohol is actually something that makes your sleep worse, makes your sleep very choppy, right? So some people tell you, I only snore when I drink alcohol, for example, right? So conservative treatments are avoid alcohol close to bedtime, keep your weight down, sleep on your side if you can. Sleeping on your back makes your sleep apnea worse, in part because your tongue is sliding backwards. Also aggravates reflux, too. CPAP is the most common thing that we do. It stands for, CPAP is continuous positive airway pressure. That's the original term for it, but I've been calling it now computerized positive airway pressure because there's not really the original machines were vacuum cleaners, which are single pressure devices, but your modern CPAP machines are actually little mini computers that are adjusting the pressure breath by breath, giving you the lowest pressure at all times. If you've not seen modern CPAP, it's a lot better than it's ever been. Actually, we're in the golden era of CPAP right now. It's just never been a better technology. The machines are quieter than ever. The masks are better than ever. They're actually making CPAP masks specifically for women, and they're making CPAP masks specifically for couples. In the past, people said, well, it's not sexy to have a CPAP machine, but your snoring is not that sexy either, right? So the CPAP machine actually brings couples together. And many, many times people sleep separate. They have so-called sleep divorces because of the snoring of one partner versus the other. When you get them on, and then when they avoid traveling because it's a hassle, or they have to get 2 rooms or 2 beds. But if with a modern CPAP device, especially with the newer mask, they're specifically engineered for couples. So that in the past, the older CPAP masks, the air would blow out kind of the front of your nose, kind of like an elephant trunk. Now they're more like a unicorn, the top of the head, and they swivel, so you sleep in any position. So the CPAP has gotten a lot better. So it's not uncommon. I'm sure you've had that experience too. I'll hear that. Patients said, I can't use CPAP, but they tried it years ago. You say, let's try it now. Your sleep apnea is more severe, so you're more likely to take to it, and the machines are better quality than before. So just know that CPAP's never been better than it is now. But we do a lot of mouth appliances, and there's actually a professional society for dentists who are board certified in sleep medicine for dentists. They're trained for it. You can, so make sure you're seeing a dentist who does that kind of work. The main problem with oral appliances, mostly they're moving the jaw forward. Your tongue is tethered to your lower jaw, so if you move the jaw slightly forward, then you can clear the space. You do not need inches, you need millimeters to breathe better. Resistance of flow is exponential to diameter. Small changes by moving the tongue forward, opening up the throat, make big differences in the flow of air. So an oral appliance is useful. The main drawback of them is they have to be custom made because the boil and bite ones that you get online for maybe $100, people tend to spit them out and they're kind of bulkier. A dentist can actually custom make something sleeker for you that'll fit better in your mouth. They may shift your teeth. You're supposed to see your dentist periodically, make sure you're not messing up your bite. And also, if you have TMJ issues, they have tenderness here. When you ask somebody to open their mouth and they feel tenderness here, they may have TMJ. Because it's jutting the jaw forward, it may hurt them a little bit that way. Surgery is actually excellent. We have got a lot of surgical options. Everything from, in children, taking out adenoids and tonsils, making the roof of the mouth wider. Maybe I told you the palate is narrow. Now surgeons can actually pop that and widen it. Orthodontists can do it also, non-surgically. There are techniques to do this also with palatal expansion. Rearranging the lower face to make up more space for it. If you can open up the space for the tongue by opening up the palate, you're also making the floor of the nose wider. So you have increased flow of air through your nose because the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. And then we also now have pacemakers for the tongue, and I'm sure they were exhibiting here. I don't have any financial conflicts of interest with any of these companies, but I saw the exhibiting here. So you actually get a pacemaker for your tongue. It's something that's planted under your skin. If you see the commercials on TV, they make fun of CPAP. I don't like those commercials. Because they never tell you that's actual surgery that they're getting, but it's an implantable device. One sensor to sensor your breathing, another sensor gets tunneled under the skin to the nerve under your tongue. It's called a hypoglossal nerve. And this is basically whenever you are inhaling, your tongue slides backwards. That's not me. When you inhale, it's pushing the tongue forward. So you can get one of those if you don't want to be on CPAP. And you have moderate to severe sleep apnea and you're not obese. There are all these rules of what you need to qualify for, but they're available to us now. Just another tool that we have. But it's not a first choice. You must try CPAP first. And medications. There are medications for sleep apnea. In the future, maybe the next time I get invited, hopefully I get to come again, the clinical trials now for medication for mild sleep apnea. So we may treat mild sleep apnea with a pill. And when that happens, people will be knocking on your doors in primary care because you'll be able to prescribe these medications for people, and it'll be a pill to increase airway tone. So the clinical trials of medication specifically for mild sleep apnea. So we'll see how they turn out, but that may be the future. We can also use medication. Some people, despite having treatment for the sleep apnea, they're still sleepy. If you've had years and years and years of your brain not getting enough oxygen and just not being tired, once we open up the space, yeah, you can breathe better, but you still had years and years of this like fatigue. And in the early days, in the 70s, when they first opened our sleep program, the ultimate cure for sleep apnea was a tracheostomy. You put a hole in your neck, you bypass the obstruction. Oh, it saved lives. Okay, but that's how you knew that was the problem, was a throat issue. So you bypass obstruction above here, above the throat, above the larynx, by putting in a trach, and the sleep apnea was gone. No more snoring, no more nothing. Many of them described a miraculous improvement in how their alertness, how they felt. But about 25% of them still felt sleepy. So despite curing the condition, they have residual fatigue because they had years and years of poor sleep. So if somebody, one of your patients says, I'm using my device, I've been treated, I'm doing well, but I'm still tired. I'm still still sleepy. There's medication that you can prescribe, FDA approved. And so there are now known stimulants that are approved for residual sleepiness. People who are treated for sleep apnea, you can use as an adjunct. And then the latest adjunct that we have, I'll talk a little bit more towards the end, is now what we talked about this morning, using Zepbound, is it Zepbound? Yeah, the GLP-1 tirzepatide. So that's something else that's been happening for us in our field that's new, that they found that they've approved the use of an injectable, a weekly injectable, to patients to lose weight. And the data was in the New England Journal of Medicine. They had 2 trials. I think half the patients were able to correct their sleep apnea after 1 year of medication. That's pretty good. Now, these were severe sleep apneics, and they were all obese. Many of our sleep apnea patients are not obese, so that's not going to work for them. And you also have to be on the medication for 1 year. So you just can't do this instead of CPAP. You got to treat them. But it's good news that we have something available and that may be approved for insurance. So our world is changing in sleep, so I'm glad to share that information with you guys. Not plain CPAP, there's all these other versions of it. Don't ever let anybody prescribe this, a plain pressure CPAP machine. They sell them online sometimes because they're cheaper, but don't do that. There's no point in doing one of those. The difference in price is relatively small. Just get, if you're going to deal with CPAP or you're getting one, just get an actually automated machine. They're much more adaptable for you. This is the tirzepatide data. The New England Journal of Medicine. This was in October of this year, and I think in November, so pretty quick. I think in October this paper came out, and shortly thereafter got approved. The FDA approved it. And you can read the data yourself, but basically a lot of them lost weight. They did 2 trials, one with CPAP, one without CPAP. One with CPAP, one without CPAP. And they all got better. By the way, the placebo group got better also. 5% decrease in their apnea-hypopnea index, but the biggest robust finding was people who got the medication and lost weight with it. It's hard to blind people to this because they know they're losing weight, right? So they can tell that they're losing weight. So we'll see how this plays out down the road. But it's definitely an option for us. That's the hypoglossal nerve stimulator. As I said, I noticed they were exhibiting outside, so please stop by if you're curious about this. I'm sure they're happy to talk to you about it. Another thing we've been dealing with, you mentioned that I was involved with the Political Action Committee. We've been trying to get rid of daylight savings. Any of you are happy to change your clocks twice a year? It's a self-inflicted issue for us. So we want to get rid of the clock changes. There's no real reason to do it anymore. The science behind it is no good. Thank you. Yes. It's like saying we want a better government, right? We all agree to that. I know, but what direction do we go in?
But I think we all vote on this? We all said yes?
What did we vote on? Do you remember exactly what we voted on? No. I'll tell you. We voted to go to permanent daylight savings in California. Many years ago, we voted on it. And people were just so fed up with changing the clocks. We said, well, anything to stop the clock changes. And we voted to go to permanent daylight savings. But that requires an act of Congress. Because the law, the way it's written, is you can stay in permanent standard time, which Hawaii does. I think Arizona does also. The U.S. territories in Guam and Puerto Rico, they're in permanent standard time. So we're allowed to, as a state, go, I don't want to change the clocks anymore. We're in permanent standard time. We're happy to do that. The health industry, the professional health societies, the American Medical Association, Academy of Sleep Medicine, all the professional groups that have looked at this, all agree, let's stop changing the clocks. Let's just go what they call God's time. That's actually called God time, because at God's time, this is their actual term for it, the sun is above our heads at noon. That's the natural time. And we're now in daylight savings time. What happens, something we get confused with daylight savings, just an easy way to remember it. I get confused with it. What helps me understand it is to remember the amount of sunlight is the same. All you're doing is shifting morning light for afternoon light. That's what's happening. So when we shift to daylight savings time, what we're doing is, when we're springing forward, is the morning will be darker to you, but the days will seem longer at the end of the day. And people in the retail industry, the Chamber of Commerce, they like that because supposedly people are more likely to shop when it's daylight out. And the golf industry likes that. People come play around the golf after work. So so you have business interests wanting to promote daylight savings because it's a longer day. So they argue, well, we hate the clock changes. We all agree, right? An agreement. We're happy to do that. So let's just make it permanent daylight savings time. What's wrong with that? in the winter, it's too dark in the morning, and your kids are going to be standing in bus stops in the dark, waiting for the buses, and it won't be sunrise till about 9 o'clock in the morning. You'll be driving to work in the dark. So we already tried it twice in this country to go to permanent daylight savings time, and it was repealed. I think it was maybe the Carter administration. I think it was. I'm not sure about that exactly. But the big oil embargo, they went to permanent daylight savings, and it was supposed to be a 2-year experiment. In less than a year, they stopped it because kids were getting hurt, so waiting for buses at night. So it's just too dark. So we don't like the idea. The way to think about this is if you want to do something that's natural, we wake up to light, we fall asleep to darkness, we want to get rid of the clock changes, so we're pushing to go to permanent standard time. And right now in Sacramento, there's a bill that's before them that's trying to vote on. It was just in committee last week, Monday. So they're trying to change that. So if you have any pull with elected officials, you can talk to somebody. Seriously, I mean, it takes all of us to do this. What?
We've already gotten stuff passed with the kids.
We're trying. Yeah, we're trying.
Work on this, what are you doing?
What the problem is that, actually the way we passed a law in California, first state in the nation, to delay school start times, and we did that based on parents, it was volunteer parents, walking in the halls of Sacramento, handing out PDFs of the articles on mental health, on the teenagers. The opposition was the teachers' union. And nothing against unions, I'm not trying to be too political here, but the opposition was they thought they should have local control and not have an unfunded mandate. So they didn't want any changes in that. But it took years of parents talking to the elected officials. And they had professional fundraisers. The teachers union is a big organization. They did fundraising. They actually ran commercials on the radio that they spent on this. And we had no fundraising. Nobody came to knock on your door, ask you, or filled up your text asking you for money to do this. Simply, it was just parents that were pissed off, walking the halls of Sacramento, handing out the PDFs. And eventually, California became the first state in the nation to have a law to stop forcing kids to go to school too early. And then Florida imitated the law. So now there's 2 states in the nation that have this going right now. I'm trying to make it a national thing. But anyway, that's one group. To go this way is harder because you're going up against the Chamber of Commerce and the financial interest. In fact, it was during George W. Bush's presidency that daylight savings got expanded. We used to spend more time in standard time. Now we spend more time in daylight savings time. And if you read the Wikipedia description of this, if you want to look there, they said it was actually lobbying from the golf industry that got them to expand this. And the current attempt is this called the Sunshine Protection Act. If you come across this, coming from Florida, which is actually a crazy thing because the sun does not need protection from us. It's kind of hubris in that comment, right? Sunshine Protection Act, like we're protecting the sun. But that's what they're calling it, Sunshine Protection Act. Who's against protecting the sun? That's not like a thing we should vote for. But it's really about going to permanent daylight savings. And we already know that that's not good. So the Senate had passed it, the House stopped it. And we'll see where this goes in the future, but that's something we're trying to do with. So anyway, at least in California, we're trying to go to permanent standard time at a state level, and hopefully at a national level we'll do this too. But that's what we're currently actively working on right now. So I was just in Washington in March talking to people about this kind of stuff. Another thing to think a little bit about sleeping. Sleeping is biological, but the way you sleep is learned. So think a little bit the comments earlier about lifestyle, right? The need for sleep is biological, but the way you sleep is learned. You're taught how to sleep. All of you have learned how to sleep. Sleeping is a learned behavior. You teach your kids how to sleep. Think of yourselves. When you have your own, how you sleep yourself, it's a learned behavior. If you have a significant other, you have a bed partner, right? How did you decide the side of the bed to sleep on? The first night you shared that bed with that person, one person picked a side, the other one was just happy to be there and pick whatever side was left. The next time you share the bed with that person, you just went right to that side automatically. And when you guys travel now, with your significant others, you don't even have to comment on it. You just go to that hotel room and you put your stuff on your side, and your side is just nothing even to discuss. And in fact, if you have a regular bed partner and your partner's away, you got the bed to yourself, right? You watch people on the sleep lab, they stay on their side. In fact, if your significant other went to your side of the bed while you're away, you might feel offended. They invaded your space. Right? How do you feel about your significant other you sleeping on your side of the mattress, on their side of the mattress, right? You coming over, you might not like that. So that's how we do it. So sleeping is a learned behavior. If you don't believe me and you sleep alone, simply rotate your body in the bed and put your feet where the pillow normally goes. You're gonna feel very weird. Same bed, same everything you've always been sleeping on, you're gonna feel completely thrown off. The need for sleep is biological, but the way you sleep is learned. This comes into play with insomnia. Insomniacs have learned to sleep that way. The thought of sleeping wakes them up. So the good news is that you can learn new ways. You can learn new habits. old dogs can learn new tricks, right? It is true. So one way to think about this is the inherent paradox of sleeping is that animals, when they're sleeping, can be attacked at any point. So all humans protect themselves while they're sleeping. One of the ways we do it is by waking up periodically, checking out what's happening. And about 10 times an hour, if you look at your brain waves, we have little like 3-second bursts of brain waves that look like we're awake. We're like checking out things all the time. People sleep better in groups, actually. You know, if you're by yourself camping all alone in the woods, you won't sleep as well. But if you're in a group of people, even if you're separate tents, you still feel better, right? So there's an inherent practice of sleeping that we can be attacked. And if you think of it that way, if you're in immediate danger, you shouldn't sleep at all, right? We're in earthquake country, right? If somebody goes fire earthquake, you should be able to go from sleep to immediately waking up. We drift into sleep, but we rapidly wake up. Nobody here has fallen asleep yet? Watch anybody fall asleep. They kind of drift into sleep. Naturally, we kind of drift into sleep, right? And when we go into that very light sleep, stage 1 sleep, in fact, it feels like we're awake, but we're actually asleep. Just watch any of you. If any of the body near you, kind of nodding their head, closing their eyes, right? Just watch them. They close your eyes. If you nudge them, what do they say to you? I'm awake. I'm resting my eyes. When you're in a light sleep, it feels like you're awake. Don't bother arguing. Just know that's part of the condition. In a light sleep, you think you're awake. The ramifications of this are lethal. People fall asleep at the wheel because they think they're awake. If you've ever driven your car and don't remember having passed some exits, you were probably asleep at the wheel and just lucky to be alive. Okay? And the way the police know that somebody fell asleep at the wheel is because if there's an accident, there's usually a violent accident and there's no skid marks. They don't hit the brakes at all. They went full speed and hit something. That's how they know. So if you're when you're sleeping, it has to be rapidly reversible. But if you're in danger of any kind, you should stay awake. Right? If your child is sick, you should be able to stay awake. If you're a good sleeper, you should be able to stay awake all night without any real problems. We're not that fragile. You can hold your breath underwater. You can skip a meal. You can go without sleep if you have to. Right? That's not insomnia. That's you staying awake on purpose. That's immediate danger. And then the opposite is what's a good night of sleep? A good night of sleep is waking up really refreshed. Falling asleep easily, sleeping through the night, waking up refreshed, right? Just kind of that joyous feeling, like I woke up, I'm happy to be alive, right? That's that nice feeling that hopefully all of you have felt at some point in your lives, if not on a regular basis. That's a good night of sleep. But what about chronic danger? If you're in a war situation, a chronic danger situation, people sleep in spurts. Chronic danger, chronic stress, it's all the same to the brain. If you're in a chronic stress situation, you're going to sleep in spurts. So insomnia in some ways protective of the situation that you're in. But when you fall into a trap is when what your main worry is sleeping. If I'm worried about sleeping, I'm going to stay awake. And that's why people with insomnia talk a certain way that nobody else talks about. If you ever talk with an insomniac, and there must be insomniacs in this room, you deal with insomniacs all the time. Only insomniacs say these things. They say things like, I try to go to sleep. Nobody else says that. Everybody else says, I go to sleep. Insomniacs say, I try to go to sleep. Or if they tell you, if I'm lucky, I'll get 5 hours of sleep. Have you ever heard anybody say that to you? If I'm lucky, so nodding your head, if I'm lucky, I'm going to hit the lottery. If I'm lucky. But it's out of my control. But if I think of sleep as something I need to be lucky to obtain, that means it's out of my control. And if it's out of my control, I'm potentially in danger, and therefore I should not sleep. Right? Somebody with sleep apnea, the more they sleep, the more they're choking. So the insomnia, the waking up, is protecting them of their sleep apnea. So you take somebody with sleep apnea, don't treat their sleep apnea, just give them a sleeping pill. They're going to be sleeping more, but they're going to feel worse in the morning. So you got to take into account how they're doing, right? So they can't think of it that way. It can't be if I'm lucky to get my sleep. The other thing you'll hear from insomniacs, that only they say, nobody else says this, my problem is I can't turn off my brain. Have you heard this before? All day? Yeah. Yeah, if I'm lucky, right, I'll get my sleep and I can't turn off my brain. That's my problem. That's not your problem. You're not supposed to turn off your brain, right? You turn your brain only off once and that's it, right? So you don't turn off your brain. A sleeping brain is alert at night. A brain is protecting you. It's just in a different mode, right? Your car, when you park your car, is not running, but the alarm is on. There's still things going on in the background when you're sleeping. So you're not supposed to turn off your brain. That's not your problem. That's not what's wrong. But people with insomnia get trapped in misconception. We're running out of time? Cool. So it was a wonderful time talking to you guys. I'll stop there. I do have a few minutes. Yeah,
We want to
thank
save
you.
time for questions, so.
Thank you. Okay. There's some things that I do. Thank you. Time for questions. Thank you so much for listening to me, guys. Thank you.
So my question.
Actually, the lady behind you want to raise her hand. I don't think. Did you raise your hand first? I didn't see you. I apologize. Oh, you went like this, but she went like that. Okay, go ahead. But you spoke. Go ahead. You, ma'am.
So my question is, I mean, a lot of us carry, sleep trackers.
I got two.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
So, but
Invite me back.
when you look at the sleep, and I hate to use myself as an example, but I feel like my sleep is fine. I've had a sleep study in the past. I don't have sleep apnea. I might now.
Well, what's the question? Tell me a question.
The stages of sleep are abnormal.
On the tracker? On the tracker. Which one are you using?
This is just a Fitbit.
The Fitbit, okay. They got in trouble. I think they had a lawsuit, didn't they, Fitbit, because of how they were using their data? But they had some issue with that. They got into some trouble. I'm not trying to disparage them, but I know they had an issue, Fitbit. They're one of the first sleep trackers out there. A lot of people use the Apple Watch. I have an Oura Ring. They were both gifts. That's why I wear them.
But basically,
But there's an issue, right, with what you're saying. Nothing is wrong, but I had a sleep test, right? So that's kind of like, well, there was a reason that sleep test was ordered.
well, the sleep test was ordered because of fatigue.
There you go. So something was wrong.
Fatigue.
Yeah.
It didn't say I had sleep apnea, but it said that I had a high index of periodic limb movements.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always in light sleep.
Right. So that's somebody you may want to repeat that sleep test, because what happens is when people have trouble breathing, some of the sleep devices, some of these they measure sleep. Some of the tests you had may have gotten sleep studies can give us false negatives, not false positives. Keep that in mind. Sleep tests give us false negatives, not false positives. So if you suspect sleep apnea or any sleep disorder, fatigue, and the test comes back normal, you may have to repeat it. You can't really fake the opposite. You can't fake that you're asleep and holding your breath on purpose. So we don't get false positives, but we do get false negatives because the instrumentation in of itself makes you sleep lighter. It won't show up, especially in women. Sleep studies tend to be underreport severity in women especially. If they're using usually oxygen, premenopausal women, they don't drop their oxygen as much as men do because they're meant to be able to breathe through pregnancy. So home sleep tests is particular, but home sleep studies in general underreport severity in premenopausal women. So if you have residual symptoms still and the doctor, talk to your sleep doctor, they may repeat that test for you. The periodic limb movements are very common, but they're usually not that symptomatic. But usually what happens with those is if you have trouble breathing, if the sensor doesn't pick it up, when you're not breathing well, your body jerks and they'll pick it up as a leg movement. So that may be another false indication. But talk to your sleep doctor about that. The lady in the back? Yes, you. Yes.
What do you have? You have the Aura. I asked you 3 years ago which one you liked to track sleep, and you didn't really have an answer then.
I got the gifts afterwards.
Oh, okay. Which do you like better? Do you have,
What?
which do you like better?
I think, there's an old saying that a man with two watches never knows what time it is. You've heard that saying before? And a more modern version of it was somebody with two GPSs is always lost, right? So now somebody with two sleep trackers doesn't know if they're awake or asleep because they disagree all the time. They don't agree with each other at all. So the more longitudinal tools, the more curiosity, the more conversation starters. I chatted with somebody earlier who had one on. I don't know if one's better than the other. I think the oxygen is a little bit better on the Oura Ring. The Apple Watch seems to do more stuff because it has more sensors in it, and it's picking up moderate to severe sleep apnea. So they're just tools. It's like asking me which scale do I like, right? Which bathroom scale, right? They're just tools. So as long as you use one and consistent with it, what?
The one that weighs lightest, of course.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yes,
Next
sir.
question.
Hi.
If you could further define waking up refreshed, because I think about.
Wow.
I remember my 3-year-old getting up and tearing across the room, and I thought, God, I wish I felt like that when I got up.
The question.
I have, but,
Yes, you have.
I think that's normal with. Are you still supposed to be like a 3-year-old when you're?
You usually want to sleep like an 8 or 9-year-old.
The question is defined, what
Yeah.
does feeling refreshed?
Yes. So,
How long should that lag time be?
I've done a lot of talks, but you're the first one to ask me to describe what it's like to feel refreshed. It's just generally waking up not tired, right? The founder of our field, Bill Dement, got to go on the Johnny Carson show. And I have that video I can show it to you guys if you want to see him on the Tonight Show. And Carson asked him seriously, why do we sleep? And he goes, well, after all the research that we've done, all this work that we've done, the answer is we sleep so we don't feel sleepy. And they laughed at him. But that was a very deep answer, because the reason we sleep is not to be sleepy. There's a homeostatic drive to this. So when you first wake up, there's something called sleep inertia, which is a little bit of fogginess, but that should lift very quickly. You must be rapidly be able to wake up and go. So you should feel alert. So the best way to talk about it is think about, how do you know what a good meal is? Because you've had bad meals. How do you know what good sleep is? Because you've had bad sleep. So once you've had a good night of sleep, you know what that feels like. And in fact, that's very frustrating to people with insomnia, because once they get occasional good nights of sleep, they get frustrated they can't get it more often. But in general, you should be able to wake up feeling alert, active in your day, be able to run around all day, do whatever you have to do, and not have to take a nap, and feel refreshed. That's what you really want to do. That's the simplest explanation for it. So 8 and 9-year-old people, they go to bed feeling safe, comfortable, and loved. They have serenity in their lives. You really want some serenity, right? That's what you really want for your state of mind issue. It's not whether your life is perfect, it's can you go to bed in a state of like, whatever is left unfinished, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm giving my day closure, and I'm starting tomorrow. So that's that serenity part. But there's a physical part. You should not wake up with aches and pains. You should not be sore. If you're getting up to urinate at night, something is wrong there. Normally, we don't pee in the middle of the night. If you're getting up to urinate, that's already letting you know something's physically wrong with your sleep. Could be lots of reasons for it, but you should not be getting up to pee. Your mouth should not be dry. You should not be snoring. If any of those things are happening, just talk to your local sleep doctor about that. You should wake up feeling good. Has anybody here wake up feeling good? Am I the only one? Okay, yeah, here he goes. You have a better answer? Anybody waking up refreshed is? What do you say? You're the lady next to you. You didn't raise your hand. She did, yeah. Yeah. Would you wake up feeling good? Tell them what's that feel like to you? Yeah. There you go. I listen to music first thing in the morning. I just crank up some music. I'm feeling ready to go. Yes, sir. Do we have time for another question or no?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, in the back.
I have a quick question. I have a good number of sleep apnea patients get treated, and a lot of the time they come back, they said, I need a sleeping aid, I can't sleep.
Uh-huh.
I need a CPAP. Is there something wrong with their setting? They should go back, talk to them, or is it safe to give the sleeping aid?
The answer is yes to both questions, actually. You can do both. So you can look at the report. If they're using CPAP, they probably have an app on their phone. You look at the number of events they have, and it should be less than 5 per hour, usually 1 or 2 events per hour, hours of use. You can see all those kind of things. You can actually have them pull up on their phone. It'll take you seconds. It's not hard. It's not intimidating. It's meant to be easy to look at. So take a look at it yourself on their machine. Maybe the machine has to be readjusted. Maybe they've gained weight or dropped weight. Sometimes to lose weight, they have to be adjusted. But you can prescribe hypnotics with the CPAP device. In fact, it's safe to do so, because the hypnotics are going to, the CPAP machine is a dynamic machine that will adjust the pressure. So if they do take something that makes them sleep longer with a sleeping pill, the machine will adapt to it. So it's a completely safe combination to do. Thank you. We have any more time? We're done. Tell me.
I think we'll take one question, but
You pick the person. This is your group.
he's had his hand up for a while.
Hi, sir.
In my life, I think I've met 3 insomniacs.
Really? In this room, there's more than 3. How many of you have insomnia in this room right now? Raise your hands. You say, look, you can meet 3 more. Go ahead.
They all have the same thing. They have a professional job during the day, and they choose a night job because it's very lonely. But I'm just wondering, is that a physiological or psychological, whatever? But they only seem to rest for about an hour between jobs.
So there were shift workers.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of shift workers have sleep issues, for sure.
No, they only choose to work at night because it's very lonely.
People with depression, people who are lonely can be depressed. And no, I'm serious. When you deal with somebody with insomnia, 40% of them have depression. And one of the first suicides I ever had as a young physician was somebody with insomnia, so I have a lot of respect for it. So whenever I see any patient, when I'm presented by one of our trainees or fellows, if they have insomnia, I would say, is the patient depressed? Because somebody who's lonely, if some people have very empty lives, and I tell them you're going to spend less time now, let's say somebody with insomnia spends 9 hours in bed to get 6 hours of sleep. They wasted 3 hours. So now they'll have you go to bed later and spend less time in bed. They say, what am I going to do at that time?
Can you get along with 1 or 2 hours of sleep?
No, you won't, not in the long run. But also know that if you meet an insomniac, part of the syndrome is the underreported severity of their sleep, because they suffered so much with their sleep that they usually tell you the worst case scenario. And that's one of the values of sleep trackers for some people, to get a sense of there's a disparity between what they're perceiving and what they're seeing. The lighter you sleep, the more you think you're awake. and they do something that they think is very logical. Well, I only sleep 1 or 2 hours, they'll tell you. What do you do the rest of the time? You're in bed. I'm resting. But they're actually dozing in and out of sleep and not appreciating it. So they're sleeping more than they realize. But don't need to argue. Just know that most people with insomnia will get better in about 2 months when addressed correctly. It's actually wonderful that we be able to treat chronic insomnia better than ever.
All right.
Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very kind.